Did you know that Skyrim has a sword that can stunlock dragons, a bow that basically makes you invincible, and a warhammer that swings faster than a one-handed sword? Well, if not, in this video I'm going to share 10 game-changing secret weapons in Skyrim, and of course, how to get your hands on them. Let's start with a sword that can make even dragons look like complete losers. I am of course talking about the unbelievably overpowered Wind Shear, a sword with a special effect that can completely paralyze any enemy in the game. This is due to the fact that Wind Shear causes a guaranteed stagger on every successful hit, as well as offering a bash effect that will full-on paralyze your enemy, and in some cases even send them flying in the air, which is frankly hilarious. The end result being that as long as you keep swinging the sword, then your enemy will be in a permanent state of stagger and will never be able to attack you back. It literally breaks the game and makes any encounter a total breeze. Also, as Wind Shear's effects are not considered enchantments, they don't use charges, meaning that you can continue to use this effect infinitely. But why do most people miss it? Well, Wind Shear isn't exactly in the most obvious place. Basically, during the final Dark Brotherhood quest, Hail Sifis, you will board a ship called the Kataraya. Then, in order to loot Wind Shear, you will need to walk to the end of the bowsprit, the pointy bit of wood that sticks out the front of the ship, and there you will find Wind Shear wedged into the wood. It's really easy to miss, as the Hail Sifis quest is basically in the complete other direction, and there's no other obvious reason to start exploring around the Kataraya. Well, now you have a reason to pick up one of the most broken weapons in the entire game. Basically, if you use Wind Shear strategically, it's borderline impossible for enemies to hit you. Speaking of strategy, if you're into exhilarating turn-based combat where every decision matters, and that you can download and play completely free of charge, then you'll want to hear about today's sponsor. And stick around, because at the end of this segment, I'll show you how to get your hands on a substantial extra bonus as well. I am of course talking about Raid Shadow Legends, and the exciting news today is that the fan favorite Ultimate Death Knight Legendary Champion is back and is available completely free for new players. The Ultimate DK is a pure defensive powerhouse who will keep your team feeling better protected than the Dovahkiin in full Dragonplate armor. His passive ability, Too Awesome to Die, redirects all single target damage and debuffs straight to himself, allowing the rest of your team to freely dish out damage. And on top of that, he's also an absolute nightmare for enemy healers due to his ability to automatically heal himself for 20% of any healing spell they cast on their own team. To get your hands on him, you'll need to download Raid Shadow Legends using my link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen. This will net you 2 epic champions, epic ultimate Galek from the start, as well as Zargala as soon as you hit level 15. Then on top of that, you can pick from one of 6 different legendary champions using the codes that I'm showing on screen right now, completely free of charge. Personally, I'd go with the Ultimate DK, as having a tank that powerful just sets the stage for the rest of your team to melt enemy faces. Just remember to enter the code for your legendary champion within 48 hours of using my link so that you don't miss out. Next up is a two-handed sword that can start dishing out damage before you even get into melee range. The Bloodskull Blade accomplishes this with its special ability that releases sci-fi style red energy arcs every time you power attack. It's honestly about as close as you're going to get to a laser weapon in Skyrim, outside of mods at least. These arcs deal a decent amount of damage and bypass enemy defenses entirely, and they also don't cost any magicka or use any charges, which makes the Bloodskull Blade effectively a hybrid melee and ranged weapon with unlimited charges. It also synergizes really well with the slow time shout and just mobility based builds in general, as it allows you to kite tougher targets around while still allowing you to do damage to them even if you're not in a melee range. It's just an overall very cool weapon that offers a completely unique playstyle. The reason the Bloodskull Blade is often missed is that it's found during an optional quest from the Dragonborn DLC, a DLC that many new players skip entirely or don't even realise it exists, so you can see why an optional quest within that DLC can be so easily missed. To get the blade, you'll need to start the final descent quest in Raven Rock Mine by speaking to Cressius Corellius. Then you'll need to follow that quest through until you find the blade beside the corpse of Gratian Corellius further down in the mine. Okay, let's move on to a fully ranged weapon, and in this case, one that could be confused for a machine gun due to its ridiculously rapid rate of fire. This is due to Zephyr's built-in enchantment that makes it fire 30% faster than a normal bow, which, despite it only being a dwarven tier bow, makes it one of the highest DPS bows in the entire game. And much like the previous two weapons, this is a hard-coded weapon effect, not a traditional enchantment, again meaning that the effect is infinite without requiring you to ever recharge it. This effect also stacks with the quick shot perk from the archery skill tree, taking your rate of fire to ridiculous levels and making Zephyr the perfect fit for any rapid fire archery build. It's almost the most broken bow in the game, but more on that later in the video. Oh, and you can even get it at level 1, if you don't mind running through an entire dungeon dodging enemies and then jumping off a cliff, that is. Basically, you need to go to Arkenfams, or however you pronounce the location that I'm showing on the map right now, probably not in the way that I did. Then you need to either progress through the quest with Katria as the developers intended, until the point that she shows you her old bow to loot, or like I said, you can make a mad dash through the dungeon trying to dodge all of the enemies until the point that you can loot the bow from the end of this tree stump and then jump off the cliff into the water and try to escape with the bow as well as ideally your life. Another hidden weapon that's key strength lies in its ridiculous attack speed is the Longhammer, a two-handed warhammer with an effect that gives it a 30% faster swing speed, which without any other tricks applied puts it in the category of one of the very best melee weapons in the game. However, when you combine it with the Elemental Fury Shout, which further increases your weapon's swing speed, it becomes absolutely ridiculous. Basically, the combination of these two effects allows you to swing a two-handed warhammer at the speed of a one-handed sword, and the result is you simply smashing your enemies to pieces. It's the perfect fit for a berserker-style build, and it must be truly terrifying to be on the receiving end. To get hold of the Longhammer, you simply need to travel to Liar's Retreat, then at the end of that cave you'll find the body of Rad, who will have the Longhammer right beside him. There's no quest required, which is why it often goes unnoticed by new players, and you can get it as early as level 1, if you can survive the cave that is. Okay, moving on to a very unique weapon that actually changes form depending on whether it's day or night, as well as evolving as you use it to claim more lives. Oh, and having one of the coolest sword graphics in the game. The first form of this weapon is Dawnfang, which starts off by simply dealing fire damage with every hit that you make during the day, but after killing 12 creatures also benefits from an absorb health or magicka effect on top of that, resulting in a sword that puts out some pretty devastating hits, especially in the early game before other weapons start to overtake it. Then, during the night, Dawnfang will transform into Duskfang, swapping its fire damage out for frost damage, with the secondary effect remaining the same. There's no major benefit to switching between these damage types in my view, especially given that you can't really control when they change, but it's thematically very cool and again easily missed due to this being introduced in the anniversary edition of the game as part of the Creation Club content. To get hold of this sword, you'll need to enter the Riften Ratways, at which point you'll receive a quest called a Soul Divided. Follow the quest from there, and once you complete it, you will receive Dawnfang and Duskfang as your reward. Next up is an easy to miss warhammer that might not swing at the lightning speed of the Longhammer, but packs such a punch that it only needs to connect once or twice to pummel most enemies into the ground. Nerve Shatter is another Anniversary Edition weapon that, as well as offering a very high base damage per hit, also applies shock and magicka damage to your target, making it a particularly diverse weapon due to its ability to lock down both melee fighters and magicka users. This makes it a great choice for any battle mage type build in my opinion, or indeed any melee build that wants to focus on one of the game's most powerful two-handed weapons. It's another weapon that's easily missed due to it only being included with the most recent version of the game, the Anniversary Edition, and to get hold of it you're going to need to read the Seducer's Bandit Leader's Journal, which you'll find after defeating the Seducer's Bandit Leader as part of the Balance of Power quest, which in turn can be started by speaking to Rissard, who is the leader of the caravan that travels between Whiterun and Markarth. Once you've got the Bandit Leader's Journal, just follow the quest from there to eventually get Nerve Shatter as your reward. So the next weapon on the list isn't really much of a secret. However, there's a naughty way of getting it at level 1 that can give you a huge power spike. And that little secret definitely deserves a place on this list. Some veteran players will have guessed that I'm talking about Chillrend, a weapon that offers a high base damage and a massively overpowered frost effect that both puts out damage and has a high chance to paralyze your enemy with every hit, rendering them utterly useless. And you're not supposed to get hold of it until you're deep into the Thieves Guild questline. But here's the thing, you can actually grab Chillrend at level 1 by heading over to Mercer Frey's back garden in Riften, picking the lock on the gate, using some crafty parkour to climb up onto this barrel, walk over the fence, and then scale the roof by moving side to side whilst jumping until you reach the top. You can then drop down onto the balcony, pick the lock, and then make your way into the basement to steal Chillrend from right under Mercer Frey's stupid nose. Though do remember that this is a scaled weapon, so if you want a more powerful version of it later in the game, then you'll want to avoid doing this at level 1. There's no danger in looting this next weapon at level 1 however, as is only available once you hit level 36. And in this case, when I say weapon, I should say weapons, as this is actually a pair of swords called Blood Scythe and Soul Render, both of which work together in visceral blood-spattered harmony. Both swords put out some pretty tasty base damage, with Blood Scythe also absorbing health and lowering the enemy's armor, and Soul Render absorbing magicka and dispelling the enemy's magical defenses. So dealing a truckload of damage whilst also healing you, restoring your magicka, and making the enemy weaker to both physical and magical damage. So yeah, they're just a tiny bit overpowered. Despite this fact, they're often never found by new players, as they're only available once you hit level 36 and complete the Deathbrand quest on Solstheim, which begins when you read the Deathbrand book, which can be found at multiple locations, including the Retching Netch Inn at Raven Rock, which is probably the easiest to get to. It's not that long of a quest, and these twin blades offer some awesome endgame build possibilities, so it's definitely worth doing. Another massively overpowered weapon that's just waiting for you to claim it on Solstheim is the Champion's Cudgel, but this one has a lot more to offer than just being a fairly decent weapon in its own right, because it's also the key to the highest damaging weapons in the game. The Champion's Cudgel is a unique two-handed mace that comes with the Chaos Damage enchantment, which gives every swing a 50% chance to deal fire, frost, and shock damage, each of which are rolled individually. Now that already offers some pretty serious burst potential, especially since very few enemies will have resistance to all 3 damage types. However, you can also disenchant this item to learn the Chaos Damage enchantment yourself, and then you can apply it to a Stalrim weapon, which, due to presumably a bug that was never fixed, results in your Stalrim weapon putting out a truly ludicrous amount of damage. In fact, it is the highest single hit damage of any weapon in the game. Hence the Champion's Cudgel being the key to unlocking Skyrim's ultimate weapons. However, this is another weapon that's tucked behind a Dragonborn DLC side quest, so it's easy to miss. To get hold of it, you're going to need to complete the March of the Dead quest on Solstheim, and you're going to loot the weapon from the corpse of General Falx Curious at the end. And finally, we have the hidden weapon that I reckon might just be the most broken of them all, due to the fact that it makes you pretty much impossible to kill. That is the Bow of Shadows, a bow that has a special effect that causes you to turn invisible for 30 seconds when you draw it. And that's every time you draw it, with no cooldown and no requirement to replenish its charges. So you can basically fire an arrow, put the bow away, draw it back out again, and instantly become invisible, causing the enemy to disengage and search around for you like a moron. And you can simply repeat this process over and over and over, never coming out of invisibility long enough for an enemy to get a single hit on you. You're basically invincible. Then on top of that, it's also one of the highest damage bows in the entire game, meaning that it makes quick work of most enemies even without the invisibility shenanigans. It's just insane, really. But despite it being such a stupidly overpowered weapon, many players still miss it, as it's yet another weapon that only came around with the anniversary edition of the game. To get hold of it, you simply need to complete the In the Shadows quest, which you can start by speaking to the Steward of Whiterun, who can be found in Dragondreach Keep. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing for more Skyrim content. And don't forget that you can use my raid Shadow Legends link in the description down below, or scan the QR code that you can see on the screen right now to grab your free legendary champion today.